Zach Choi is one of the most famous ASMR mukbang YouTubers. He cooks really delicious food with great editing and sound production. Occasionally, Indians steal his video to re-upload themselves. If you ever see a Zach Choi Would You Eat This video with the same title, but deceptively with an Indian guy blankly staring into the camera from behind the text, that's why. But reaction video and or TOS abuse is besides the point. I think there is a dark side to Zach Choi the public is ignorant of, and I can tell you why. The deep web. People hear deep web and think of assassins, creeps, hitmen, drugs, drug addicts, gun runners, and live stream snuff movies. But honestly, 95% of the deep web sites are essentially abandoned alien/conspiracy pages that haven't been visited since before Y2K. I use the deep web mainly to play MMORPGs with my friends and may or may not occasionally pirate music. Totally benign stuff. Then there's DeepTube. As you can guess, it's a copy of YouTube, but on the deep web. Again, it's not what you think. There's no gore or porn, really. Just people uploading music, movies, and copyrighted material YouTube's bots would automatically delete. There are also 0 ads, which is usually more than enough motivation for tech-savvy losers like me. Most videos don't have over 1,000 views. But would you believe me if I found Zach Choi on DeepTube? I like to watch him while I eat, like many people do. I had just microwaved some ramen noodles and sat down when I noticed a suggested video on DeepTube. The video was named Ready4Dinner.avi with 4 replaced by the number 4. The thumbnail clearly showed Zach Choi, except he looked sad, which was unlike him. Obviously, I clicked the video without delay. After buffering for a time and a refresh later, the video began to play. The video began with Zach Choi looking straight at the camera. No food, no nothing. He looked glum, but also angry. His eyes were also hyper-realistically detailed, which is odd because he's Korean. The image persisted for a whopping 38 whole seconds until it jump cuts to his cutting board. I began to finally eat my noodles. Zach Choi dumped the meat onto the cutting board, and I just about choked on my noodles. A severed human arm! I just about spat out my noodles. He began to rapidly dice up the arm with a rusty meat cleaver, with all the ambient ASMR sounds you would expect. He severed the fingers and placed them into a blender and turned it on. The diced arm he coated in batter and breadcrumbs before deep frying them. Back to the blender, Zach Choi then added basil, salt, and a cinnamon stick to the blend and blended it again. Finally, he drizzled this horrid sauce over the deep-fried arm slices. Finally, he glibly ate one slice. This was awful. Then it got worse. The camera then cuts to Zach Choi approaching another Korean woman in a big dog cage off stage. She's dressed only in her bra and underwear. He drops the food into her cage while speaking to her, but his voice is drowned out by her screams and shouts in another language, probably Korean, obviously. Then I noticed she was missing both arms below the elbow. Oh my, the science! Was Zach Choi feeding this woman her own arms? That's so fucked up, but it makes so much sense. For someone who eats fried food all the time, Zach Choi is remarkably skinny and fit. Unless he's feeding the rest of the food to his captive victims. I dared to see what came next in this dreadful compilation. Jump cut back to the cutting board, but this time there's a live man strapped to a gurney, naked save for his plain underwear. His mouth is sewn shut, but he is clearly distressed until Zach Choi injects the man with a syringe with a blue liquid. Seconds later, the man passes out. My noodles were getting cold, but I did not care. Once the man was passed out, Zach Choi made a Y incision on the man's torso. He then used a curved blade to work under the peel and peel back his skin to reveal bloody muscles. There was so much blood at this point. Even Zach's blue apron was now slick with red. Zach Choi then equipped a handheld brisket saw. He plugged it in and began to carve the man's chest cavity open. I vomited when I noticed the unconscious man's body twitch at the trauma. Zach placed the brisket saw down and plucked a Dremel from his cart. Then he began to saw through the man's ribcage. Zach went through several saw blades and had to use an entirely different Dremel when it became too hot to hold. When Zach was a literal walking man of blood, he wrenched the sternum away and snapped the rest of the man's ribs outward with a sickening crunch. With more of his textbook rapid editing, he removed every organ from the man's torso with his bare hands and threw them in a bucket to spoil. Once empty save for more muscle and spine and pelvis, Zach Choi began to stuff the dead man full of cheese and garlic. When he was full to the brim with cheese and ham, Zach sewed the Y incision back up with fishing line and slid the corpse into a gigantic stone oven and closed the ventilated door. One magic of editing later, and Zach Choi, with proper oven mitts, pulled the cadaver out of the oven. The man's gut had ruptured mid-bake, causing burned cheese to cascade down his belly. If this displeased Zach, he did not show it. Using a chainsaw now, he carved up his macabre meal in all its visceral horror. He sawed and hacked and sawed some more until he had practically turned the man into cooked giblets. He sprinkled some basil on the giblets and ate them with a grin wider than any human mouth should be able to. The other giblets he put into a blender. Again, the camera cut to Zach feeding this young woman in the dog cage like earlier. This had to be a later date because the woman was noticeably heavier, as if she had been eating quite well despite her awful conditions. This time, Her face and mouth were affixed to a clear plastic funnel and tube that trailed up to another funnel at the top of her cage. Again, the woman cried and pleaded as Zack mercilessly poured the meaty slurry into her funnel. The woman had to drink or drown. And honestly, maybe drowning was not such a bad option. Another jump cut. I noticed that the video feed was nearing its end, thankfully. Now, the disarmed woman was in the kitchen. Zack Choi was cleaned up and looking fresh and happy as ever. This must have been a while later, because the woman was even heavier still. Zack Choi pulled a large industrial switch, and a crane whirred to life. The woman was slowly lifted by her ankles until she was nearly eye level with Zack. Then he pulled out a cattle stunner, otherwise known as a captive bolt pistol. I knew this was not going to be good. Zack, smiling, aimed at her forehead. The piston cracked the crying woman right in her forehead and killed her instantly. Her whole body went limp. Zack went to work. He fastened big zip ties around her arms and thighs. He then withdrew a large hunting knife that honestly bordered on a sword and stabbed the dangling woman's throat to bleed her. Blood gushed out and onto the floor and into a nearby drain around blood-stained tile. The average human body has nearly 5 liters of blood, and Zack watched every drop with a big smile. When it was over, Zack withdrew his chainsaw and severed her arms and her head. All falling to the floor, surrounded by gore. Zack then put on clear goggles and picked up a hose. With it, he sprayed pressurized batter all over the corpse. Once she was covered, Zack began to use industrial bag after bag of breadcrumbs to cover her in a second layer. Once satisfied, Zack pressed another button, and the floor opened up, revealing a massive vat of boiling oil. The crane lowered his victim into the oil. Zack Choi was literally deep frying a human being like a giant chicken wing. Another jump cut, and the crane pulled her out of the oil. This poor woman indeed looked like a giant deep-fried chicken wing. And Zack Choi ate her with buffalo sauce and Dijon mustard, the purest sign of evil. He unhinged his jaw, which looked like the mouth of a demon, and took meaty bite after meaty bite. In 28 seconds, Zack Choi ate an entire deep-fried human being. He wiped his mouth and smiled with his perfect white teeth and gave a happy thumbs up. Then a message appeared above him in text. It was an offer. I quickly had Chrome translate the Korean. It said,
I am so very hungry. Will you keep me fed? I can pay 50,000 American dollars for every person given to me. Also, if you liked this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. And support me on Patreon and Subscribestar.
Beneath the Patreon and Ko-fi links was an address, which I will obviously omit, but it was for human delivery. $50,000 minimum guaranteed? That could buy so many Funko Pops. But who could I send into the maw of Zach Choi? Then my phone rang. It was my fiance, Stacy.
Hey babe, I know your dog and mom are really sick, but I'm leaving you for Chad because he drives a Tesla. Also, I got that abortion because I was fucking bored. Anyway, can I come pick up my records and shit?
I paused and considered the deep web and Zach Choi. Of course, honey. Come on over. But are you ready for dinner?